What is going on, guys? It's the Variety Film Brothers. I'm Andrew.
I'm Thomas.
Welcome back to Variety Discussion, and in today's video we're going to be going back to the MCU with Iron Man 3, the very first film in Phase 2, and this is a really divisive one. There are a lot of people who love this movie, and sometimes it feels like more people that actually hate it. What did you think?
I thought the movie was pretty good. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I had very good, positive thoughts while watching this.
Oh yeah, for sure. So better than you remembered, I guess. Yeah, it was for me too. And this one's always been one that I've loved, but at the same time, I totally get people's criticisms with it. The big one being the Mandarin twist. Obviously, a lot of people are really not a big fan of how they portrayed the Mandarin in this movie. And I was gonna wait a little bit to talk about that, but I mean, let's just go on and get that out of the way. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's very interesting how they put an actor into it instead of just having him just
just having it be the straight up Mandarin.
But I mean, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think I like how they wanted to put a twist on it. I think that was a good idea. I'm not a huge fan of exactly how they went about it, because here's the thing. The Mandarin in the comics, he had a lot to do with magic. And the MCU, this is still very early in the MCU, like I said, first movie of Phase 2, we were not ready for magic at this point. I think that would have been a bit big of a leap. I mean, we had a little bit of magic with Loki, but I mean, that kind of comes with the character. I think we weren't really ready to bring that into the more grounded aspects of the MCU yet. So I think kind of changing that idea was a good idea in concept, but I do think they made Trevor a little bit too silly in a way, and I actually think a lot of the humor in this movie is pretty okay. But the joke where he's all like, "Oh, I wouldn't go into that bathroom for 20 minutes," that lost me. I think that was I know you want to reveal this plot twist, how do I say it? A really big change in tone. You really want to get it out there, but I think that was a little too much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I wish that the actor was a little more serious, though. I feel like I wish he was more determined in what he was doing and more just I'm just getting paid to do this.
See, I'm fine with him being a little bit more of a jokey character, and I actually like that, how serious he takes it in a way. I think that's funny. Again, just the bathroom humor was a little too much, because I just don't think there's a way to actually make that funny. So, before we start to really break this down, let's get into our scores. Thomas, what do you score this movie?
I'm going to give this movie a 90.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a pretty good score.
Yeah.
I have to give it an 81. It's pretty good. I think there are a lot of good things about it, but I still just have to give it, put it into that lower B territory. I think one of the main criticisms about this movie is that there's not enough Iron Man in it. There's too much Tony Stark and not Iron Man, but I really think that's kind of what a lot of people get wrong in a way. I really like to see Tony put in these crazy situations with not a whole lot to work with, because I mean, these are the scenes that really show that he's smart, not him just working away in a lab or messing around with the holograph things back in his basement. This is the stuff that really shows his IQ, I think, and I do like to see that. A lot of the issues that I have are with Tony's character and the villains of this movie. I actually really like the progression of Tony's character from the Avengers. I like that affects him, but I just think he makes some stupid decisions in this movie.
Yeah.
Throughout the entire time Tony was in the MCU, I really wanted him and Pepper's relationship to be better. I really wanted it to get better, because we talked about in our Iron Man 2 video that they just don't have a great relationship, and it's a little better in this one at times, but I just really don't like when he won't let her leave the house.
Yeah.
She's like, "Tony, we need to get out of here. You went too far this time and we need to leave." And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about, Pepper. It's going to be fine." Even though he has no plan, which is another one of my problems, is that Tony threatens the Mandarin, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, Tony, why are you so stupid? Why would you do this?" I actually think, in theory, in concept, that is a good idea, because you're bringing him on your turf. But then after he does it, he just goes home and he's like, "All right, I'm going to do a little digging here, just a little bit of research." And I'm like, "No, Tony, bring out all those suits that we see later, have them on every square inch of your property, and really prepare for this." Not that you would even need to break out very many of them. Honestly, if he was in any other suit except for the Mark 42, which I do have to admit looks fantastic, but it's not done. So he's trying to use it, and he's all like, "Oh man, it won't even fly. It won't even shoot missiles." And I'm like, okay, this was the reason they wrote it like that was so that we could get more of those, Tony getting out of these, rough situations, and I like that, but we just need better reasons for that. You know what I mean? Because Tony has 40 other suits in here. Why not just put another one on?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
It's
Literally.
Yeah. It's very interesting how he wears Mark 42 so often. Like
it really is.
He's wearing a prototype suit.
Right, exactly. Like, if you're not done with it, wear anything else.
Yeah.
I mean, because, like I was gonna say, like, literally any other suit would have been able to take down those 3 helicopters. Maybe even the Mark 1. I don't know, because it's got loaded missiles, right?
Yeah.
It can fly at least a little bit, just not very well. So, I mean, literally the Mark 1 would have been a better choice for this fight. It's whatever. I mean, it's technically a nitpick, but, like... So, yeah, I really like this movie, but it just has some kind of stupid holdbacks. Like, you know, just things that I feel like could have just been written a little bit better.
Yeah.
Not really even having to do that much work to do so. You know what I mean?
It's also kind of funny how, like, the person walks into, like, Tony's home, and supposedly Tony has security on, even though they're just able to walk through their doors.
It's such a joke, dude. Like, because Tony is a force to be reckoned with, but this movie would have you believe very differently.
Yeah.
And again, if that part of the movie were just handled better, my rating probably would have jumped like 10 points, honestly. Because, like, that whole scene, you know, when he doesn't have a plan, when he's telling Pepper what to do, what not to do, that scene makes me not like him. Everything else, pretty okay.
Yeah.
But I really like the intro to this movie, though. Starting at the very beginning. We flash back to 1999. Really fun scene. We get a Yinsen cameo. I think Happy's 90s look is just hilarious, just really funny. I'm not a big fan of Aldrich Killian, though. Like I said earlier, I think one of the other areas this movie struggles is with the villains. Killian, he has this really, like, there's not a lot of character to him. I'm just gonna be honest, you know. So they have to give him this really obvious glow up later, and, like, he goes through, like, some physical therapy or something, gets a haircut, grows some stubble out, and, you know, so he's all attractive and stuff, and it's like, that's just not interesting to me. Like, Whiplash, in my opinion, from the last movie, is a better villain than Killian is, because at least he has some real motivation, and it's not kind of just, like, the same thing that we've seen, you know, 100 times, because, I mean, think about how many movies we've had with, you know, the villain just being out to, like, the hero wronged him a little bit in his past, and even though he's better now, the villain comes back to haunt him, you know, like, and really that's something the MCU does later on more, like with Mysterio and with Vulture. So this is kind of when we start falling into very repetitive territory, and it doesn't work, in my opinion, very well. And he's kind of just a creep on Pepper. That's something that I think Pepper doesn't really play too well. Or react to very well.
Kind of like plays it off like it's a
normal exactly.
When
like,
it's not.
No, not at all. If you're going to a business meeting with somebody and they start touching you and they give you a kiss on the way out,
charge them.
No, pepper spray them. It's more like it. But another one of the earlier scenes that I do really like is the Mark 42 suit up scene to the Christmas music. This is a Christmas movie, by the way. I don't care what you say. This has so many scenes with Christmas vibes, and I honestly wish they would have leaned more heavy into that. I think making like an MCU Christmas movie, you know, would have actually been not like a full-scale Christmas movie. Like, it ends with like Tony like and Pepper like opening presents on Christmas Day or something. I don't know if I'd go quite that far, but I would have maybe liked to lean a little more into it. Because a lot of people seem to have some kind of debate about that, and I'm just like, is this really what you're going to argue about today on the internet? Why Iron Man 3 is or isn't a Christmas movie? But to me it is. And that's enough. But yeah, that scene is really fun. I really like Tony and Jarvis's banter in this movie. I think it's pretty good. I think we get more of that than we do in the first 2 movies. Because I feel like in the first 2 movies, Jarvis was really a lot more robotic than he was here. I feel like this is when he really starts to develop that personality. I don't know if that has much to do with Vision's personality, but I think there might be something there, a through line, if you really want to see it.
Because, like, in the first 2 movies, he was really just like a callback, like, call, and then he responds and that kind of stuff. Now there's, like, kind of some sort of, like, humor. Not really, though.
I mean, like, kind of, yeah. Because he has the line where he's, like, at the end of every sentence, I say the wrong cranberry. So they start to give him a little more humor here. That isn't too bad. The scene, though, where they're at the, like, the diner or the restaurant, whatever, and the little kid just goes up to Tony, and he's just like, how did you get out of the wormhole? That stuff is too funny, dude. Like, it's so funny. Like, I took that seriously when I first saw that in the theater back in 2013. Dude, this movie's 10 years old. That's crazy. But I took it serious. I was like, oh, we have we have a big moment here, but now it's just funny to me.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like it's a very weird moment. I think it would have honestly been a better scene to just like see footage on one of the TVs at the diner just of, the Battle of New York, and Tony sees that and reacts to that. Honestly, I think that would have been better, a lot less funny.
Yeah.
Because that's just hilarious, dude. But like I said, I really like how he's responding to events still from the Avengers, because it really makes sense that Tony would be shaken up from all that. Like that was a lot he was exposed to. He went into space carrying a nuke on his back, like he thought he was gonna die. He was introduced to aliens. Like that was the craziest day of his whole life, and his life was already pretty crazy before that. So the fact that this has lasting effects on Tony, I think, is super interesting and almost necessary. Like if they had him just play all that off, like I don't know, it just wouldn't make him feel as real. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I would like to say though how they bring back the terrorist idea from the first movie to
the 10 rings. The 10 rings, yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was very interesting.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Like that was a really big thing from the comics. The 10 rings was, and like the second movie really dropped that. Like we just like completely pivoted away, and really the MCU didn't go back to the 10 rings until Shang-Chi. And they did a lot of really interesting changes and things with that we'll get more into when we get all the way to that movie.
Yeah.
Maybe like 2 years from now, probably, at the pace we've been going. But I do like that it's, like you said, a relevant thing in these movies and something that's kind of continuing. It just doesn't really feel like it has as much of a presence as it does in the first movie. And like you really, like in that first movie, you really have Tony determined to take these guys down. And that's also something we're kind of lacking in this movie, is that raw determination from Tony, because like Tony, when he gets determined, I think that's when he's at his most interesting. Like the first movie, he's crazy determined. In Endgame, he's crazy determined. Well, not at first, but after he gets back into it, and that's like an aspect of the character I really like to see, is when he kind of gets too zoned into what he's doing. Because I think it's kind of a relatable thing. I think we've all gotten a little too wrapped up in something, and I think this movie doesn't really capture that as much. Because like we have the scenes of him having the anxiety attacks and things like that, but after that it's usually followed up by some kind of joke or something. You just don't get that, like I said, like that raw determination that you do in the first movie, and I think that would have been really good to revisit. But something I kind of skipped over unintentionally that I meant to bring up is that this movie does kind of have conveniences. Like really just the entire way he ends up in Tennessee is kind of a weird plot contrivance, because like Jarvis just takes him there while he's unconscious, and Jarvis is just like, "Oh, this is the flight plan I prepared," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, but I don't think it was time to do that yet." You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know. It's a little shaky for me at times, bringing that score down just a little bit, but it's still enough to keep it in a B. It's not a big deal, but it's just like, I feel like if the script was just a little bit tighter, we could have taken care of some smaller things like that. But I think the kid is a pretty good addition to this movie. He's not too annoying. It's so easy to bring on a kid and just have them completely overwhelm the movie with their annoyingness. But this kid is actually not too bad. He and Tony have some good, back and forth and things like that. I really like some of the like just really cold jokes that Tony throws at him, just leaves him out in the cold, drives away. Like that stuff's pretty funny. You don't see all that a whole lot, especially like compare him to Captain America, dude. You're like, Steve is like perfect. He would never do that. And that's kind of what makes it funny. Is like, Tony, he's not gonna run the kid over, but he is a little bit of a dick.
He's like, "So you're just gonna lay me out in the cold just like my dad?" And he's like, "Yeah."
It's such a good scene, dude. And it's a very memorable one too. I think this movie has a lot more memorable scenes than Iron Man 2 does, and that's another reason why I think this is just better.
I wish that Tony used all of his suits in Endgame.
Yeah, that was a really good idea that you brought up. Because like, why wouldn't he really, when you think about it? And I know that the Avengers mansion got blasted or whatever, but Tony's house got blasted, and they were down there, so he should have like at least 30 suits ready to go by Endgame, and that would have been really cool to see, and a really good callback to this movie as well, because this one isn't really a very important movie in the MCU, and that's something I was also going to bring up, is I think a lot of people don't like how small scale this movie is. Like, at this point, we've already been introduced to the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. and all that, so we do have this bigger Marvel Universe out there that this one just doesn't really connect much with, because this has like nothing to do with S.H.I.E.L.D., nothing to do with Hydra or like Asgard or anything like that. And in a way, I kind of like that. And I think it kind of helps keep this movie, like, kind of timeless. You don't even need to be very caught up in the MCU to watch the Iron Man movies. Whereas the Captain America ones are pretty important. And, like, Civil War is basically an Avengers movie. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I do like it how it's, like, kind of big scale, but kind of not really.
Like big for Iron Man and his group.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, so, like, big on a personal scale,
Mm-hmm.
but not big as in, like, oh, this is a MCU event
Yeah.
here. And I think that's good, because if you have, like, that's what the Eternals really does wrong. Spoiler alert for the Eternals, that is not a movie that we like, even though I guess we already said that in our MCU ranking video, but obviously we'll get more into it when we do a variety discussion on it. But the Eternals is another one of those solo movies, you know, isn't really supposed to be this big deal in the MCU, but it's another one of those movies that just has to have the world be at stake, you know, like, oh, if this goes wrong, the heroes are gonna, you know, lose and the earth is gonna explode, and then it's like, oh, so what you're saying is we're gonna win with absolutely no consequences and no real stakes.
It's such a weird concept to have a fully built robot to be born inside of Earth.
Like, I mean, it's not like a robot, but I get what you're saying.
Like,
it's,
you know,
I mean, basically, I guess.
It's just a big ass robot. It's just a...
Exactly. And movies like that really make me appreciate this more
Mm-hmm.
because, you know, like you said, it's big scale for these people. You know, like, it's not the Earth is at stake, the universe is at stake, the human race is at stake. It's just like, oh, the president might die and Pepper's in trouble. It's a little generic, sure, but, like, again, it's refreshing to have more, you know, because, like, when we do have that scene at the end where all the Iron Man suits come in, you know, it feels like a big deal, you know, because it's not too big, but it feels big, like, appropriately big for the situation, if that makes sense. You know, it's not like, oh, the world is in danger, we're all gonna burn. It's, you know.
Also, like, it feels like in this one where it's like, Tony is, like, personally trying to kill these people because of, like, his life. Like, Pepper's in it, and, like, Happy was in it, so, like, he feels like he needs to step in and, like, stop these people.
Yeah.
But, like, if it's a big enough, like, incident to where, like, people should think that you should step in because you have a bigger power over them, you know?
I get what you're saying, yeah.
Like, I don't know. I don't like it very much.
No, I totally agree. Totally agree. Like I was saying earlier, one of the big, like, controversial points of this movie is there enough Iron Man in it? For me, there's just enough. Like, I don't know if I gave, like, a flat-out answer earlier, but for me, there's enough, you know, and I like that we don't always see Tony in a suit, because he's more than the suit.
I feel like Tony is mainly Iron Man, because he just wears the suit most of the time, but I do also like how he's out of the suit and knows how to, like, navigate and, like, beat these people without the suit.
Right.
So, I'm okay with it.
Right, like, I feel like to say that Tony is just Iron Man, like, Tony is Iron Man, obviously, but, like, to say he's just Iron Man, I think kind of devalues him as a character a little bit, you know, it's kind of relegating him to Hawkeye. Like, Hawkeye is only special because of his bow, you know, and
Take it away from him.
there's really, exactly, not much more to him than that. I mean, he has basic fighting ability. I don't know if I've said it, but Tony Stark is my favorite MCU character even now, you know, like, almost 5 years after he's been dead in the MCU, which is crazy to think about, dude. Yeah. Time is moving too fast.
It is.
But yeah, and honestly, I don't think anyone is ever going to take his place.
But I really do like the fact how even without the suit, since he's been used to working with the suits for so long, that he's really, like, know what goes into the suit and what's not in the suit. That way we are able to see his, like, his skill and his, like, IQ with, like, the microwave and, like, the oil and, like, his movements in general of how, like, he was trapped and then that, like, he put that girl in, like, a chokehold.
Yeah.
That was impressive to see.
Yeah, that was really cool. Another scene that I really like in this movie that I could see a lot of people not liking because it's a fake out, but Pepper's fake out death scene. I think that was really good because a lot of movies kind of just aren't willing to fully go there. You know what I mean? Like, or at least if they do, it's not very well done. Like, you're very sure that they're alive. And I think in this one, I could reasonably understand actually thinking she's dead there when she falls. Tony kind of gets over it pretty fast, or at least he seems to. I mean, he's in the middle of a battle, I guess, so I guess you kind of have to get over it a little bit for the moment, but I think it was a good idea.
I was like, oh, she possibly could be dead, but I think she's still alive.
Yeah, it's like just ambiguous enough to be like, maybe I could actually kind of see this movie, because like if it was just like falling into the fire, I think made a big deal. If it was just a fall, then you're like, oh, she's fine.
Yeah.
She's probably fine. But the fire helped a little bit.
Yeah, it kind of adds to the danger a little bit.
Yeah. Speaking of fire, though, I think all the effects in this movie are actually pretty good. I don't think it's quite as good as the first movie, to be honest. You can tell they definitely started leaning more into CGI elements here. But, like, in the first two Iron Man movies, we had a lot more practical usage, and I think that just lends itself so much better to the Iron Man suits. I think they just look so much better when, they look like, when they, like, just have real dust on them, and they feel more grounded. And this one had some good moments, but it was, like, this one did, like, a weird kind of half and half method. Like, this is when they started making the actual props and then CGIing over them.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, that looks better because you have a much more realistic reference, but I can still tell that's not real. It still doesn't really feel like it's in the room sometimes. Whereas in the first two, not every shot, obviously, it looked a lot more tangible.
Yeah. They also used some, like, practical effects for not really any reason, like whenever they were falling from the sky.
Oh yeah, I thought that was interesting, finding out that they did elements of that practically, like shot it actually in the sky. I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if you really needed to do that, but I guess props to you guys for it. Props for even trying that.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Yeah, why not? But another thing that a lot of people are kind of divisive on about this movie is at the end when Tony seems to retire. I never really took it that way. I think it was supposed to be kind of this ambiguous thing, like Tony might be done. It kind of just depends on what Robert Downey Jr. wants to do and how the money plays out and what the because plans at that time were really weird. They had a lot of movies in development that they weren't sure were going to happen or not, because like Ant-Man, for example, was supposed to happen a lot earlier and they were having just a bunch of problems with that. So I think they kind of left it ambiguous, and that's really what it feels like to me. Like a lot of people, when Age of Ultron came out, they were like, Tony retired. Why are they undoing his retirement? And I never really took it as a solid retirement. I think it was just like Tony trying to get a break from the Iron Man aspect of his life, from the Avengers aspect of his life. What do you think?
Yeah. Because, like, in this movie, he had a lot of Iron Man suits, obviously, as we see.
Right, like, exactly. Like, you can tell, like, that's pretty much what his whole life had been about since the Avengers happened. He's pretty much just downstairs in his basement making Iron Man suits, and I think he deserves a good break from that.
And, like, he said, like, he'll shave a few things off, which I think he should. I think he should at least make, like, more suits, but not, like, 42 of them.
Yeah, maybe not quite that many.
Maybe, like, 15 or 20. I think 20
is, maybe.
Like, acceptable.
Maybe.
But, yeah, I never took it as him, like, retiring for sure.
Oh, yeah, no, it never really felt like that to me. Yeah. I do think that maybe having his arc reactor taken out was what really made people think that, like, Tony was done. I think a lot of people take that as too serious of an aspect of the character. Like, he's not Iron Man anymore if he doesn't have the arc reactor in his chest. And I'm like, we got that for, like, 3 movies. I mean, technically 4 with the Avengers. So, I guess technically 5 with the Incredible Hulk, because he has a cameo in there, but we're not going to talk anymore about the Incredible Hulk. Let's just leave it at that. But go watch our variety discussion on that if you would like to hear us complain about it. But yeah, so I think a lot of people kind of overreacted when they were like, he doesn't have the arc reactor anymore. That's such a big aspect of his character. And I'm just like, well, he clearly never really liked it. I think he saw it as something he just kind of had to embrace, even though, he kind of didn't. Whereas I think that it's kind of representative of his role as Iron Man, like, it's still a part of who he is in a way, but, like, it's not, he doesn't want it to be his whole life anymore.
Yeah, I'm surprised it took him two movies to realize, I probably should, like, take these things out of my chest.
Honestly, and it kind of diminishes Iron Man 2 in a way, because he has that whole plot line where it's like, my arc reactor's killing me, but I can't take it out.
Oh, man.
So I do think that actually causes a problem there, now that I think about it. And I don't know if that should bring down my score for this movie or my score for Iron Man 2. I don't know. I'll have to think about that, and we'll address it in our next MCU ranking video, which probably won't be for a while. But with 5 MCU projects coming out a year, we are undoubtedly going to do one at least once a year, something like that.
Just like, oh man, I wish there was a surgery that I could get these pieces out of my chest. What can I do?
Turns out you could just grab a crowbar.
Oh yeah,
and just kind of yank that sucker out of there. I think this is a really good movie. Not one of the very best from the MCU. I could definitely see where a lot of people would be very split about this movie, but overall I think there's more good than bad here, and that's kind of just always how I felt about it.
I always pictured this as overall pretty good, and there's some misunderstanding, some problems with this, but overall I consider this pretty good.
Yeah, back then, back in the day, I really wanted an Iron Man 4. Like, I wanted an Iron Man 4 like crazy. But this movie, and the second one in consideration as well, kind of make me realize that we didn't really need them, in my opinion. We got, like, plenty more character development from Tony later on in the Avengers movies and, like, his appearances, like, in other movies like Spider-Man Homecoming. So we really, like, even though, you know, this was being 10 years ago, you know, we still got a lot more of Tony's character after that. And again, in Iron Man 4, I just don't know how interesting it would have been because, like, 2 is just fine, and then 3 is good, but not great, in my opinion. And I just think a fourth one would have just kind of probably been somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, like, I don't think there's really any more character growth that you could put in for Iron Man 4. Like,
right, like, no matter when you put it in the MCU.
Like, in the first one, he was really, like, a big jerk. He was kind of a dick.
Right.
And then, like, throughout these movies, he's kind of grown towards being a better
right,
person.
like, you know, from Iron Man 1 to Endgame, we have a pretty good character journey just within that. So, if you asked me, like, 3 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, we need an Iron Man 4. We need that right now. We needed that 5 years ago. But now I'm just like, you know, honestly, I think we had enough Iron Man content. I'm pretty satisfied with what we've got. I think there's plenty to break down with what there is. So, all right, I think that finally brings us to the end of it. Thank you guys so much for watching this one, especially if you made it this far into the video. Be sure to like and comment down below if you enjoyed this review or you enjoy Iron Man 3, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Peace!